Hi, alchemists, and welcome back to another episode of Elemental Educator. I'm your host, Tyler, and if you're joining us for the first time, thank you so very much for tuning in, and welcome to a place where we redefine leadership and challenge the status quo. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to Elemental Educator on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast from, and check out our website, elementaleducator.com. Today, I'm joined by Jeff Bradbury, podcast host of the TeacherCast Network and educational leader. I can't wait to dive into this episode with Jeff where we unpack the symphony of teaching. So get ready to let the alchemy of education ignite your passion for learning.
This is the Elemental Educator, the podcast where we kindle the fires of dialogue with the alchemists of education. We're here to embark on a journey where ancient wisdom meets the contemporary world of education. On Elemental Educator, we dive into the deep waters of adaptability, feel the grounding earth of core values, ride the swift winds of change, and ignite the fiery spirit of risk-taking. Fire, earth, wind, water. This is the Elemental Educator, and now your host, Tyler Como.
Hello and welcome to the Elemental Educator podcast, where we explore the forefront of educational leadership, digital innovation, and transformative teaching strategies. I'm your host, Tyler, and today we have an incredibly inspiring episode for you. Our guest today is Jeffrey Bradbury, an ISTE award-winning educator, public speaker, and educational strategist who uses future-ready skills to promote digital innovation in the classroom with a focus on equity and diversity. With over 20 years of experience in public education as a K-12 teacher and instructional coach, Jeffrey has worked tirelessly to create diverse, innovative, and authentic activities in the classroom while supporting administration as a project manager, website designer, and community support specialist. He's played key roles in customer success, project management, and communications, developing front and back-facing websites, social media campaigns, and audio and video content for renowned organizations. I'm thrilled to have Jeffrey on the show today to share his insights on fostering digital innovation and equity in education. So without further ado, let's dive into the conversation. Welcome to the Elemental Educator podcast, Jeffrey.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. So I just want to start with, it's the big question. How did you get to where you are now?
Well, one step at a time is really the first answer that I usually give. I've been in education for the last 20 plus years or so. Started out actually as a music teacher. I've got 2 degrees in music. I did orchestra for about 15 years or so, and then switched into instructional coaching. And the roller coaster has been an amazing ride, getting a chance to work with great companies and amazing educators and get a chance to really see what happens in the classroom.
Now, you said you got into education as a music teacher. What inspired you to start there?
My whole family has always been musical and started playing string instruments at a very early age. It just took off from there. When I was in high school, I wanted to teach music, and so I did. And I had an opportunity to, as a conductor, lead orchestras, lead opera companies, work in Manhattan, conduct at Carnegie Hall, did all of that. And all those lessons that I learned from being on the stage and working in an ensemble and putting things together is what in my teachings, in my PD, in my coachings, in my on the podcasting network, things like that. It all goes together.
Thank you. You share a pretty cool story. And on my spin, I like to link it back to the elements holistically. And somewhere in here, where we're going to expose your earth or the root and the foundation as to why you did what you did. Because there's a difference between playing instruments and then wanting to orchestrate and wanting to teach people to play and then wanting to get into the education realm. So where did that connection come where you transitioned from just wanting to play instruments to wanting to share that passion with other people?
Wow, that's a great question, and timely too, because of some events that recently happened. I was a viola player, was the instrument I picked up in 3rd grade. It got me through high school, got me into college, got me through college. And then somewhere in the middle of that, I clearly remember playing in a concert. And for music people out there, the piece was called Carmina Burana. And it's a huge piece, big orchestra, full score, full choir, dancers, the whole deal. And I'm sitting there in the orchestra playing my heart out. And I'm looking up at the conductor, and it just hit me. This is what I want to do. And that was how I got what we call the stick bug, wanting to turn around and start to become the conductor. And ever since then, I've been on this mission for how can we get people together on one single focus and move everybody in that right direction. Teaching and conducting really are the same thing. The word maestro really does mean teacher. And you realize a few things very quickly when you're standing on a podium. Number one, you're the only person on the stage not making a sound. And you're also the only person on the stage facing the wrong direction. And if you're ever been in a classroom, those things go together, right? You're the only one that's not a student, and you're the only one that's not moving in that direction. You're the one leading the group. And no matter if you're a teacher, an administrator, or a conductor, or a dad, I always believe you have one job in this world, and that's to inspire. So the whole idea of being a conductor or being a teacher is lead by your actions, show the example, and inspire others for greatness.
And there's the earth right there. It's the desire to inspire the people around you. And that's a really beautiful way to put it, actually. As a conductor, you're the only one not playing an instrument and you're facing the wrong direction. That is a perfect summary for what teaching actually is, because you hit it dead on. And it's not even that we're the only one that's not a student. We're also the only one not learning the content, which means hand in hand with the student. We're the only one that's more independent in the classroom. We're self-sustaining, where we have that higher level of expectations on ourselves. Facing the wrong direction is also true because you're adding perspective to it. We don't always have the perspective of what the students are seeing and how it's coming through.
It's a weird thing.
How do
It
you
really is. It's
go
just
ahead?
it's a weird thing. One might have the philosophy that when you're in a classroom, it's not your job to teach; it's their job to learn. And we can debate that one all day. But in an orchestra situation, they don't need you. It's the same concept, right? No professional orchestra needs the conductor. So what's the role of the conductor? He takes all of the ideas and tries to get everybody moving in the right direction. There's many professional orchestras out there that don't need teachers. Or sorry, many professional orchestras out there that don't have conductors at all. They all
None of them need
right,
teachers,
right,
for the record.
but at the same time, we all know that you can go to an online class or go to YouTube and learn something. You don't need a formal teacher in the room, right? So what is our role? And that's where it just goes back. I'm here to inspire you to do something. Hopefully something that we're doing gets you to ask a question or gets you to be inquisitive or gets you to think about something and then move forward in a certain way. Conductor, teacher, dad, it's all the same stuff. It's just in a different package.
Now, and you share something powerful there too, because when we talk about the earth being your inspiration, you also talk about how the job of the conductor, the job of the teacher, it's to go with the flow and help create that alignment. And I'm not sure if you have the answer for this, but I'm going to play off of you mentioning facing the wrong direction. How do you, as a conductor, situate yourself to check if the direction everybody else is facing is the direction you're trying to align them to?
Again, there's so many similarities between being on the podium and being at the podium, if you will. You have to put yourself in three positions constantly. Where are we going and where were we? And all of those different things are helping to move the lesson or the piece along. Are the actions that I'm taking right now bringing out the actions that I'm wanting to have, actions that the sound I want to have, right? Like if I teach a certain way, are the students getting it? If I wave my hands a certain way, are the musicians doing it? Do I need to make an adjustment? What did it sound like based off of my actions? But then where do I want to go with this lesson? Where do I want to go with the next musical phrase? What do I need to do to adjust to get that? So you're constantly in this before, now, and after headspace. And there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that just comes naturally when you're either on the podium or at the podium trying to give a lesson or trying to put on some music. And the more students, I got great stories of
Yeah.
Manhattan-based opera companies, and you've got people on the stage moving and dancing and speaking different lesson or different languages, and you got everybody on the podium. And the more chaos, it's just awesome sometimes.
And that's the fluid dynamic of water, where it's constantly in motion, and you have to make adjustments as you go. You talk about reflecting on the past, scene where you are in the present and looking into the future. That's when we think about leader in me or habits of highly effective people type of stuff. You're thinking with end in mind, sharpening your saw kind of ideals here. which is all good elements of quality leadership. There's that constant piece of reflection from music teacher to jumping out of the music teaching industry and just teaching industry kind of in general. Where did that decision come from?
It was really just a natural progression for me. Around 2010, I started listening to podcasts. I got into this one podcast all about using your Mac. And this guy was basically doing a show about this, again, 2010, right? Way a long time ago now. How do you use every single button on Mac OS? And how do you use it for this reason, and show me your iPhones, things like that. I met the guy. We hit it off. We had similar interests. We started doing a show together called Apple Aid. And it was again, go back to 2010. Two guys talking about their iPhones, traditional early stage podcasting. And then in the spring of 2011, we were talking after a show. And I said, look, I'd love to do something like this for educators, where instead of picking apart the different buttons on a Mac, I'm picking apart the different buttons on EdTech application, and how can your phone be used in the classroom, right? This was back in that point in time where the big conversation is, should we be using devices in the classroom? Not even one-to-one.
Still a
Still a
conversation,
conversation,
yeah.
right? And at that point in time, the way I say it is, he let me go and said, run. Mama bird pushing you off the tree and saying, okay, kid, go fly. So that was an amazing experience. July 11th, 2011, I couldn't sleep. I woke up at 1 in the morning. I had this logo, I had this concept, I had this word, I had this whole deal. And before 3 in the morning, I had the domain registered, all the social media, and teachercast.net was born. That was the beginning of, okay, here's how I'm going to move myself forward. And the reason behind all that was because I was professional development in my school district. They started asking me to run PD sessions as the orchestra guy running PD sessions because I loved it, right? Because I could, because it's natural to sit there and talk about all these things. So TeacherCast really just came about because my district was saying we need somebody, and I didn't have all the answers. So I made some online connections, brought them on the show, and next thing you knew, I had some answers. So one thing begat the next, and here we are.
And that's something that's so powerful about what we're doing. Two things actually I want to touch on. And the first one is when you mentioned the Mac OS video and the podcast there. My head instantly went to the Microsoft videos at first. I don't know if you remember those ones. Oh, I can't remember the guy's name, but they were, I think he got labeled the most boring video on the planet, but hopefully they were a little more entertaining. When you think of it, podcasts have been around since television because people will put them on, and since radio because people will put them on in the background and walk around and do their thing and just listen to them. And that's the whole point of this, is we're hoping people listen and pull some tidbits of information from what we're sharing. The second part to that, I interviewed Jethro Jones, who's the transformative principal, and he gives a very powerful message around podcasting, and believes everybody should have a podcast because the professional development you get from simply just initiating conversations with the people around you is incredible. And I know for myself, I've just recently started Elemental Educator in, oh, it would have been April of 2024. So yeah, we're very recent and it's starting to take off. I'm happy with where it's going, but I have learned so much from just the people I get to connect with. It's incredible. So TeacherCast is such a powerful platform as well, and what it does. Within it, though, you share three memorable kind of projects in education around how you've helped. And this kind of includes serving as a department chair for instructional coaches, where you implement that future ready focus in your district. And I want to talk about that first. So, can you help me unpack what you mean by future ready?
When I left the orchestra stage and became an instructional coach, I was in a situation where there wasn't much, and I was put into a position where I was being asked to be the first instructional coach in a school district, 5 buildings, I think it was, and K-12. I was the guy. What does that mean? What do you do? I had to, again, learn how to be successful. There wasn't a program. What is an instructional coach, right? Again, everybody has their own ideas about this. How do you get into classrooms? How do you work with administrators? Your boss is the superintendent. Does he have a vision? Does the school district understand what that vision is? How can you put all these things together? And for lack of a term, it was something that I needed to quickly figure out. So how do you do that? I had to lean on what I knew at the time, which was, let's make a podcast and let's get other coaches in here and let's get other administrators in here and let me ask the world the questions so I can get the answers that I need to support my district. That's really what TeacherCast has always been about. It's my vehicle from which I can do professional learning. On one hand, it's this amazing thing that's been able to grow legs and help so many educators and students. On the other hand, it's my personalized handbook for everything that I'm doing. If I need an answer, I just look and go, oh, there's a show about this because I did it. So that's where Ask the Tech Coach, the podcast, came in. And it really just started with me and my friend who at the time was a coach. He's now an assistant superintendent. And we just started to dissect different topics in coaching. And I was learning from him. Over time, you realize that other people were in that same position. How do I do this? What do I need? And that was when coaching really started to move. That was 10, 11 years ago now at this point. And so the coaches stuff really started to bloom because you realize very quickly you're not alone. But let's go back for a second here. When you're on the stage and you're facing the wrong direction, everybody has an instrument except for you. You feel alone. When you're in a school district with 5 buildings and you have the superintendent going, "What's the deal?" You feel alone. So putting together a situation where other coaches can get together and discuss and talk and learn and share and all of those wonderful things, that's pretty powerful. And so I'm really proud of the fact that for the last 10 years, I've been able to support instructional coaches, not only in the school districts that I've been in, but also worldwide through just sharing experiences on a microphone.
And there's a lot of leaders out there that do feel alone. So, what would be your first kind of actionable item or suggestion to them on where they can get started to help break down that
You know,
barrier?
I'm going to do some shameless promotion here. A couple years ago, I got involved in the ISTE Community Leaders Program. And if you're not familiar with ISTE, it's the world's largest educational technology company. They've got their conferences every single year. They have amazing volunteer opportunities. And sometimes the word volunteer is scary, but there is a program called the ISTE Community Leaders. It's all free, but it's the best professional development community that's out there, hands down. You have educators from all around the world, from every walk of life, from every position, and every day they come together to learn from, help with, and support each other. It has been amazing. So if anybody out there is looking to find their tribe, if you will, that ISTE Community Leaders Group is absolutely fantastic because you're not out there supporting a product, you're out there supporting your students.
And one of the things that I actually really like about the ISTE platform, I teach it in my digital citizenship classrooms and I teach it in my computer science classrooms. Their first standard for students is empowering
Yes.
the learner. And that's a very powerful standard to start with. You're a digital company and you don't even acknowledge the idea of working with tech in your first standard. It's all about empowerment. And how does that resonate with you in terms of how you operate
Well,
TeacherCast?
I have a book that's coming out this year and it's called Impact Standards. The entire concept is how do you take those ISTE standards and then create a culture for digital learning. And in that book, we break down each of the ISTE standards, not only for students, but for educators and for coaches. And we really try to figure out how do you create an environment where not only coaches can thrive, but teachers can thrive through individual professional development, all that goes down into the classroom. And what exactly should that look like? How do we create those authentic activities? And you're right. It comes down to empowering the students. Again, you don't need me to teach you. You need to understand that you're here to learn. And if I empower you to learn, if I empower you to play that phrase however your instrument wants to play the phrase, then we're having a conversation. We're actually having a silent dialogue. That's when music is really kicking on all 4 cylinders.
And this conversation on empowerment relating it to these ISTE standards on empowering, this is right back to the earth that you have on that inspiring others, being there for others, supporting others through that dynamic. When can we expect this book
That
out?
is the 13-year question. It's into the publishers. I don't have a due date yet. I do have a book cover. And by the time this show comes out, hopefully soon. I'm hoping that it's a holiday find, but I don't have a date yet.
Yeah, hopefully we're somewhere. And similar boat for you. Mine is in at the publishers right now. I'm just waiting for my next step, and we'll see where it goes. Hopefully, by the time that this podcast comes out, yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, we're both somewhere, maybe releasing close to the same date. Who knows? Now, within that, you take this digital world and you create specific programs using Microsoft 365 and Google Workspaces. How are you using those to optimize leadership, optimize education?
I'm a productivity junkie. And it doesn't matter what your school district is, right? I'm a Google school district, I'm a Microsoft school district. The one thing that I find consistent in educational leadership, lack of an inbox organizational system, right? And I hope people are taking that one.
I have to jump in and share this that we had this conversation at a recent leadership meeting, and I think our school division might hold a record. We've got somebody on staff with 32,000 unread emails in their inbox, and I'm sitting there going, "Oh my god!"
I had the pleasure of walking into an athletic director's office once, and I saw 175,000 messages in an inbox, and that's the game, you know. Um, Gmail, Outlook, they're wonderful products. They do a horrible job at helping people get organized. They think that they do, but there's certain features of those applications, and we'll save this for another conversation, that really make it difficult for people to be productive. And once we can create a productivity system, then we have more time for things. I am a disciple of the system called building yourself a second brain. Create something that's going to hold the information that you don't need to be keeping in your head. I also believe that, and this is coming back from the coaching point of view, when I sit down with you to have a conversation about whatever the topic is, you should never see me do more than 2, maybe 3 clicks to find an example that I'm gonna have. And think about the last time you sat down with somebody or you were in a meeting and somebody said, "Oh, let me go find that document," and then 5 minutes later, they're still searching for it in Drive. That should never happen. So, a lot of what we do in education can be improved by creating an organizational system, a productivity system. Even last school year, before the school year ended, I had the opportunity to work with our science department, and we redesigned all of their curricular documents. Everything was named the same thing, was put in an order. Everything was done in a way that multiple teachers could easily find it. Again, if you and I are working on the same kind of work and you type in FOUR and I put the number 4, then those things are not searchable by each other. So, how do you come up with a logical system? And that's working with your curricular leaders on down, that's working with your technology leaders on down, and really asking your cabinet, going, how do you want to be able to find things when you need them? Let's build that. And I love having the opportunity to work with school districts. Last year, I went down to Virginia for a couple sessions with one of their larger school districts. We built an entire intranet, and we recreated the file system, we created the naming system, we recreated all their internal websites. It was an amazing project to work with all those educational leaders. But at the end of the day, they had a fantastic internal system for organization that's going to help out 20,000 students in their district.
It's the idea of simply cleaning
Yes.
things up because and where the main struggle tends to be is people don't see the end in mind because there isn't an end in mind because this is going to keep going and keep going. And I know I rely heavily on my search bar in Google Drive, but I've become really good at naming things so that I know what I have to search. So I'm a couple keystrokes away from finding what I need to find until I spell something wrong though. So that could that could run me in the wrong direction. That being said though, it is difficult in education to see the end in mind because when you're retiring, when you're done, when you move on, the job doesn't leave. And so it's hard to see the end point and create that organizational system. What advice would you give for somebody that's thinking, oh man, I need to not necessarily their inbox, not necessarily their drive, but I need to organize something. and I don't know where to start.
This might sound strange, but you need to think like a musician. You are a violin player who's very good at what you do, but you're also a part of a 8-person violin crew that all has to be moving in the same direction, which means all the bows have to move in the same direction, which means the fingerings have to be in the exact same way. So that way the music can happen, which is basically my way of saying, again, how are you going to name things, etc. But at the same time, you've got winds and brass, who those are soloists, otherwise known as your administrators. They each have their own way of doing things. Don't tell them how to play the trumpet. Help them understand how the music is and how their part fits into it. Translated in, don't tell them how to teach. Show them how their leadership can affect teaching. And all of those different components, when you start to orchestrate it and when you start to conduct it, if you will, you quickly understand the way that you do things in your inbox and in your Google Drives affect the greater good of the community and might actually be slowing others down.
So, how do you enable the people you work with to take that
Well,
step?
in my current position, I am a middle school teacher. I'm no longer in an official coaching role, but I'll be honest, I'm actually getting more coaching calls from this school than I have in a long time. So I'm going to go back and say it's to inspire. There hasn't been a day in the last 2 or 3 months when we were back in school where I didn't have some teacher come up and say, "Hey, I like what you're doing. How do you do that? I like what you're doing. How do you do that? I like what you're doing. How do you do that?" That's coaching. That's leadership. That's setting the example. That is, "Hey, I know you're doing this in science class. I'm teaching technology. Do you need from me so you can be successful? Oh, okay. You need spreadsheets. I'm going to now go teach my students how to do spreadsheets so your life can be easier." And that's the same conversation I've had forever. "Hey, you've got this solo in the middle of this piece. Do you want to do this together? Do you want to lead it? Do you want me to show you? Do we want to work on it outside of here so that way when we're in the large group ensemble, we're all happy? How do you see this being successful? What can I give you?" So again, there's so many similarities between the work that I do now and the work that I've done in the past. It's the same conversations. It's inspiring people to do great things by setting the example yourself. I hope.
And what's so important about that is when we talk coaching, when we talk good leadership, it's not it's not just giving answers and it's not solving problems. It's teaching people how to solve their problems and it's giving them the framework so that they can be empowered to do it themselves. One of the best pieces of advice that was given to me that got me through a lot of my first year as a principal was if you spend all of your time solving everything, one, you're going to burn yourself out. But two, you're going to teach everyone around you that it's okay to come to you with every little thing, knowing that you're going to solve it for them and take that load off their plate. If you take that moment to empower them, they might not like it at first, but they might turn back around and then start solving their own problems. And then they're going to grow from there. And then they're going to feel empowered. And we're really trying to work towards a role where our role doesn't even need to exist. That's never going to happen because dynamics of leadership are ever changing. Change is very constant and people need help navigating that change. But our job is to show and guide the way for others. And I love that you connected it all back for me to our element of earth and the idea of inspiration. Now, this is a really incredible story that you're sharing. It had to have been met at times with resistance from people around
Every
you.
day.
And so how are you navigating those elements and overcoming that?
Well, let me ask you this. What's the one thing that nobody can give back? Time. If you're organized, you will have more time. If your stuff is situated in a way, right? Again, I'll do the 30-second example here. I mentioned earlier Google does a wonderful job at many things, but a poor job at a lot of things. And one of the things that they did a poor job at is rolling out Google Classroom 10, 11 years ago. And when I say that, I always say that from the point of view of they came out with Classroom that everybody moved into things, right? Everybody's going to attack Google Classroom again. Go back 10, 11 years. And everybody says, "Oh, I know how to use Google Classroom." Fine. A year after that, they came out with brand new Google Sites. And because they took classic Google Sites and stripped it all down and came out with this brand new base level product, not many people adopted it. I looked at that and I said, this was wrong. Google Sites and Google Classroom really should be thought of as one application. Because if you're looking at the way a learning management system is, it's two things. It's a place for you to put information and a place for you to push information. And all you have to do is look at your cans and your Schoologies and things like that. It's a teaching space, and then there's an assignment area. If you look at Microsoft Teams, there's a place for you to put things, your OneNotes, etc. But then you've also got a place to push assignments out. And here we have Google Classroom, which is a great place to push documents, but there's no place to put them. That's where sites come in. So every time I teach this, I always teach put yourself in Google Sites, build your online textbook, put your lessons there. The kids can see it, the parents can see it. It is your one-stop location. It is your billboard for everything you do. You stick your slides on there, your lessons, your forms. You get it. Everything is on there. How do your kids get the templates? How do your kids get the assignments? That's Classroom. So I always teach that Sites and Classroom are really one big learning management system application together. Where am I going with this? Most people say, oh, I don't want to do Sites. I'm already in Classroom. Well, that's great. But what happens at the end of the year when you archive your class? All that stuff goes away. If everything was on a website, it would automatically be there. And you can now go spend more time with your family. And some people go, that makes total sense. And some people say, nope, I'm good where I am. And those are the people that are not spending time with their families because they're recreating the wheel every single August.
Absolutely. And I sit here and say on my classroom, I just remove the students at the end of the year, name the class, whatever subject it is, and keep rolling that with a new load of students in the same classroom.
But your back end still is going to get jammed. If you go into your classroom folder, you have all those students that are there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. So I have my next step, my Google site. And you know what? I actually think that this is something, and I don't want to talk about the pandemic a ton, but I think this is something the pandemic helped with is when we went to remote and online learning, teachers, at least in my area, were forced to find a way to connect with people. And so we actually did see the creation of a lot of Google sites come out of this. We did see optimized Google Classrooms come out of it because it was forced into our hand, where the traditional norms of being face to face and in front of the kids, those things weren't always created because they didn't need to be. Now they need to.
through and slightly after, you had tremendous use of digital tools. Recently, and I would encourage anybody to check this out, the US government released the 2024 National Educational Technology Plan. If you haven't had a chance to read through it, it's amazing. And if you go over to teachercast.net, I have a show with the creators of it. And it talks about the differences between passive use of technology and active use of technology. And on one hand, we can say, yes, throughout and during the pandemic, we had a lot of use of technology, but was it active? I use Google Classroom. And then principals go, yay, look, we're doing it. I need to come in as a technologist and go, but was it active? Were you using Google Classroom for exit tickets? Were you using Google Classroom for constructive conversations? Were you using Google Classroom to communicate were you using Google Classroom as the vehicle to connect into Canva, WeVideo, book widgets, you name it? Or was it just, hey, I use it because that's how I'm distributing documents? And you can see the difference now between schools and I even say classrooms, those who are using it active and those who are saying, no, we're good.
Yep.
We did it. We're gonna we're not focusing on technology this year. Great. In 12 years, I've never focused on technology. I focused on students. And if you look through that ed tech plan, they make some really strong recommendations. And it's an amazing document that took a long time to put together. And the team that put it together did an outstanding job. So I hope everybody has a chance to check that out. And if you want, please feel free to link the EdTech plan on the show notes here. But there's a lot of
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
in that document that if everybody just focuses on maybe one or two recommendations, classrooms will change.
And one of my favorite checks is when I hear a teacher say, oh, my Google Classroom or whatever workspace I'm using, I've built it. It's incredible. I love it. I'll walk up to a student and I'll say, "Hey, where can you
Yep.
find this?" Or how do you do this?" And 9 times out of 10, the student says, "I don't
Right.
know." That tells you one of two things. You either picked the worst student to ask that question to, or they genuinely didn't know because that technology hasn't been optimized in that classroom. And even though it's there, it's not serving the potential and the purpose that it could be serving.
And that's where instructional coaching comes in, just to go full circle on the conversation. If you're setting things
Ab-
up based on empowering learners, and a learner could be a student, a learner could be a teacher, and a learner could be an administrator. If you're empowering them the right way, you're at least pointing that boat in the right direction. Most instructional coaches don't know what their role is in the school district, and that's why there's problems right now. And then that just trickles on down. So I've been on a mission
there
to
you go.
help instructional coaches figure out what their actual role is and start to have those conversations so that way A, they can be successful, and B, they don't wind up back in the classroom.
Okay, so shameless plug here before I move on to the next part. Any innovation coach, instructional coach looking for some help, how are they getting a hold of you?
AskTheTechCoach.com has all of our instructional coaching things. I'll definitely be promoting the book once it comes out. We are up to 270 or so podcasts. We've got a great weekly newsletter that pops out. We've got a Facebook group that's thriving, and so much stuff for instructional coaches, especially this time of year. We've got, if you're new to coaching, if you're being introduced as a coach, if you're getting your coaching cycle set up, again, thousands of pieces of content out there for instructional coaches. So check it out over at askthetechcoach.com.
AskTheTechCoach.com. There we go. Now, this is such a big platform you've created. And on top of this platform, you're still
Yes.
teaching. So, my next question from here is how are you balancing not just what you're doing right now and your teaching job, because that actually isn't the hard part. How are you balancing that with
I have
family?
10-year-old triplets, and that sentence enough is what keeps me going, right? They're awesome. They're the love of my life. They're the subject of my TED Talk. They're the reason I keep pushing forward. Again, all of this stuff really comes down to one thing. I'm trying to inspire them. They see the work that's going in. They see the things that daddy's doing. They see the companies that we're working with. Last year in Philadelphia, my oldest did an ISTE presentation with me in front of 1,500 people. He rocked the place talking about his 3D prints and his 3D sculptures and how he was doing great technology things. He had a freaking blast. And in the middle of that presentation, in walks the CEO of ISTE. And we got some good selfies with Richard. So my only job that I'm doing is to inspire those 3 amazing little heartbeats.
And that's where the earth really is rooted is it's not just inspiring those outside of you, it's to inspire your family. That's a big part of why I'm here too. My little girl, not a triplet, thank you. However, my little girl is 2 now, and everything that I'm trying to do is to set her up for success and show her that she can do anything that she wants to do and to inspire all of that and to be that person that helps maybe give her that nudge to get there so that she says, "Wow, if you can do it, what can I do?" And I can turn around and say, "If I can do it, what can you do as well?" So thank you for sharing that. Now, this wasn't just though you reach an age where they can become a bit more independent. How did you balance that when they were younger?
Everything takes the back seat to the kids. Even now, I go to work full time. I come home at 3 or 4. If I can get home before the kids have or off the bus, I've got at least an hour to get work done. Then I'm dad. And I pick up the microphone at 8:30, 9 o'clock, whenever they're in bed, and then I keep going until I drop. So I really try hard not to be sitting in front of a microphone while they're running around the house, because that's my time with them. They're only 10, 11 years old once. They're going to be in 5th grade this year. So these times are leaving quickly. And even the other day, my mother-in-law texts me and says, "Congratulations, they're in 5th grade." And I said, "No, they're one step closer to being a teenager." And but they also at the same time, over my right hand shoulder here, which you can't see in the cameras, they have their own podcasting studio.
Awesome.
They're making videos, they're playing around stuff. I don't let them publish everything, of course, but the art of creating, the art of storytelling. Being triplets, they have a natural audience and they have natural guests. So they automatically are starting to interview each other and they love that. So I'm trying to give them the skills that they may or may not be getting in school, or trying to enhance the skills that they are being taught in school, depending on the situation. So they're having fun. They know that daddy talks with Google. They know that daddy talks with Microsoft. They know that daddy is helping to change the applications that they use, and they love it. And it's our little
That's so
bonding thing.
powerful. Yeah, that's amazing. And you hit it head on. Family, your earth wasn't to be a great teacher. Your earth wasn't to make a difference in a classroom. Your earth was to inspire. And because of that, your earth is also very rooted in your own family, which through your management systems, you're able to prioritize because you said it first when people say, why do I need this? You asked it, time. You want to be able to control your time. You want your time with your family because nobody likes to leave them to go and do all of their work out of the gate, right? I love going home every day and seeing my family. So optimizing that. Now, I am sure though that they've also been an incredible system around you so that when you come back and say, "Oh, I'm thinking of taking this risk," they're right there with you. So when you go to take a risk or you go to speak or you have this opportunity, how do you decide whether or not you're taking that risk?
If they're excited about things, it's not a risk. And one of the things that I do for them or because of them is public speaking. And I enjoy getting up and talking about things. I enjoy meeting people. I enjoy getting up in front of groups. A few years ago, I joined Toastmasters International. The joke is so I could get out of the house, but really it's so that way I have an opportunity to practice getting up, speaking about things that aren't Google Docs and aren't websites and aren't TeacherCast. Sometimes it's nice to go think outside of your comfort zone. And when you're working with middle school kids or when you're working with your school district's cabinet, you need to know how to tell a story, move the emotional temperature of the room all throughout the world. There's a lot of things that you can learn from doing a group like Toastmasters. And recently, last year, I will say, I entered the Toastmasters International competition and won the first round and won the second round and won the third round. And when I say won the first, second, and third round, I was actually competing in two different competitions much on the same day. And that was one of my challenges. Can I excel at long form speeches and can I excel at short form speeches at the same time? They're different. And for me, that just goes back to, can you conduct an opera and a symphony? They're similar, but they're completely different at the same time. One is controlled chaos, the other is uncontrolled chaos, mostly speaking a different language. And I, because of my kids, because of those experiences, because I had them on my side and had, let's face it, mostly they gave me material to talk about. I'm very happy to say that I walked away with a first place championship in the Toastmasters competition and a third place championship in one of the competitions. Because of them, public speaking has been fun and prosperous, and who knows what happens after that. So I'm always looking for new adventures of getting up and talking in front of groups because I know that I have the kids behind me.
And that's, oh, I love that last statement. You love that you have everyone behind you. The risk-taking side of it, playing with fire, it's not really playing with fire if there's support and excitement behind it, and that's a theme of what I'm unpacking with people too, is risks don't need to be scary, and I think risk just has a bad connotation to it. But a risk in its own is just doing something different, not fully knowing what the outcome could be. And how else can we learn and grow if we're not willing to fail forward? How else can we grow and learn if we're not willing to push our box of comfort just a little bit?
Maybe that's why
So
I'm the guy with triplets. Who knows?
there we go. There we go. You were meant for this. You were meant for this. So, what are you hoping people action in their lives tomorrow from your message?
My goal for this year is to continue to put myself in positions to work with as many teachers, school districts, and ultimately students as possible. I have a simple philosophy. If I can help a teacher, I'm helping 30 students. If I can help a principal, I'm helping 30 teachers. If I can help a superintendent, I'm helping 30 buildings. Just do the math from there. If I can help out an ed tech company, I'm helping 30 school districts. If I can get onto a podcast, I'm helping 30 states. There's opportunities out there for everybody to come together and play the same symphony. And if anybody out there is interested in reaching out and connecting with me, learning more about the book, getting themselves organized, helping out with their instructional coaching, all you got to do is reach out over at teachercast.net, hit the little contact button. Would love to talk to anybody, would love to continue the conversations. And my goal this year is just to continue working hard and hopefully someday soon little 10-year-olds will be my little video editors and it'll be TeacherCast and kids. And we'll see where that goes once that day comes.
There's a new domain purchase
Well,
right
we've already
there.
got triplets in the
Now,
classroom.com, so we'll see what happens.
there you go. That's awesome. You said something that made me think back to a conversation I had with the Prairie principals in Canada, in Alberta. We have a very small school in a town called Ontario, and it's a school that actually has a full farm on their school grounds, and a big part of their day is actually maintaining and running this farm, and they base and infuse all of their curriculum through
Mhm.
agriculture, and it's a very powerful thing. When I had him on here, he gave a very powerful statement that said, "The people at the bottom are busy competing, the people at the top are too busy collaborating." And what you just said about outreach and who you can impact and creating those connections, it's about creating collaborative conversations that align everybody back to that same vision. And again, that same vision is your earth of inspiration. That same vision is optimizing education.
When I started TeacherCast 13 years ago, on the top of the website was the phrase, a place for teachers to help other teachers. That phrase has never left. Whether it be a podcast where we can come together and talk, whether it be a PD session where we can get together, whether it be a blog post that you want to write and stick on the website, whether it be whatever it happens to be, my mission is always to be a conduit for that. How can you create a place where people are going to come together for a common goal to improve somebody's day? Doesn't matter if I'm on a podium waving a stick. Doesn't matter if I'm walking through the zoo with the kids. Doesn't matter if I'm in a middle school classroom. Doesn't matter if I'm doing PD, if I'm at ISD, if I'm in your school district. How can we create a place for teachers to help other teachers? And I think that if there's the one thing, this is going to sound morbid, but if there's that one thing that's etched in stone after everything is over with, I hope it's something in there, right? Be a place, be that conduit for knowledge, be that conduit for just be that conduit.
There we go. What is you touched on it a little bit, but what is your future? Your You gave me the short and long form speech. What does your short term future and potentially long term future look like for you?
I got to get my kids through fifth grade and into middle school, and then we'll see what happens with the long term phrase. I want to help out school districts. I want to be put in a position where I can work with educational leaders and be put in a position to do that. And we'll see what happens.
And what advice would you give to anyone listening that's struggling with just where to start?
I said this during the TED Talk, and I have a banner of this that my kids actually got to me, and it's a quote by Henry Ford. And the quote is, if you think you can or can't, you're probably right. And I saw that on a mug in a college once when I went to go visit my at the time wasn't my wife, but we went into her college and on the table there was this mug with this if you think you can or can't, you're probably right quote. And I've always just put that on my shoulder. If you think you can make a complete career change and go from this thing you've got 2 degrees in and you love doing and you've got a lot of success in, and all you have to do is sit back and you can retire, or let's switch into technology. If you think you can work with big ed tech companies, if you think you can handle triplets, if you think you can handle, like, don't let anybody stop you. There's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be paths that you want to take, but the paths are, for whatever reason, might not be open to you. Don't stop trying. You go around the sun once.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jeffrey, this has been an amazing experience for me. I We talked professional development through just podcasting in general. I've learned so much already, and there's some things that on a personal level, I can't wait to go back and start optimizing myself. I sure hope that the listeners on Elemental Educator have a couple snippets here that they can go back and start actioning today or tomorrow in their lives to be better leaders, to be better teachers, to be rooted in their earth and re-find their earth. I can't thank you enough for joining me on this episode.
I'm so thrilled that we got connected. I'm looking forward to having you be a guest on TeacherCast sometime soon, and would love to welcome anybody out there listening. Come on the show, teachercast.net/contact. Fill out a form. I rarely say no to people. Come on, tell your story, and be that conduit yourself.
You've been listening to the Elemental Educator. Our aim is to illuminate optimal educational practices on a global scale. And second, we want to shine a light on the expertise and knowledge that Tyler brings to educational institutions. He's not just a talking head. He's a practicing educator, a school principal, armed with a master's in educational administration, and on the brink of completing his doctorate. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, find us on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Elemental Educator. And to contact us, fire off an email. See what I did there? Fire off. Okay. Send an email to elementaleducator@gmail.com. See you next time on the Elemental Educator.